We are going live. One thing they should invent on Zoom is what do you call it? You know, when you're holding on a phone call, when you're calling someone like a big company, they should have like the songs.
Call waiting.
It says we're live on Facebook, by the way.
Yeah. Cool. So now we are streaming live on Facebook. Coolio. Let me just introduce the show. Hello, Facebook. I hope someone's watching. This is one person. My name is Nespiri. I'm the founder of Creative Nestlings. Welcome to the Young African Creative Conference, a conference about being young in Africa and anywhere in the world, basically, and doing the creative life and all that kind of stuff. Our first panel discussion today is on Past on the Continent. We have Josiane, Lulu, and Phillipe discussing about what they've seen in the last 10 years, the trends, and where they see the continent is going. This is about reflection on their journeys, but also on the continent's journey, culminating with 2020, of course, with the chaos that's happened, with the world reshaping and remolding itself, basically. But yeah, if we could introduce ourselves, who wants to go first?
I can go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Josiane Faubert. I'm the founder and managing partner of Pizza Stock, which is a marketplace, a visual marketplace specialized in Afrocentric content.
Oh, I can go next. My name is Lulu Njapa from South Africa. I'm a freelance travel writer, and literally just what it says. I travel and I pick up stories with my own reasons, of course, but that's basically what I do. I'm a freelance travel writer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Phillipe Nyirimihigo. I'm from Rwanda. I'm a founder of a communication agency based in Kigali, but we operate globally, essentially. And yeah, I'm also a photographer and an author of a book called This is Rwanda, Photography Aerial Journey of Rwanda.
Cool. I specifically chose the three of you to speak together because of one very important thing, which is the documentation of the continent. I think that's a good way to visualize how the continent is shaping and stuff. What are some of the interesting trends that you have seen the last few years in terms of the kind of photography and imagery that is being made on the continent, but also for the continent, but also continent for the world? What have you been seeing? I mean, we can start with you, Lulu. You're a photographer, also travel writing and everything. What are you seeing being a South African in Malawi and the imagery that you're seeing there?
So I think for me, I was a little bit worried, of course, about the imagery that I've been seeing on Africa, on travel in Africa. And that's because I'm a newcomer also, you know, I've been traveling, but writing about travel and, you know, documenting it, I've seen, I did get a bit worried about the kind of images that we were seeing of Africa. And then for me, I wanted to be a big part of the project of reimagining Africa, the online images of Africa, how the rest of the world interacts with Africa and what they see online. So now that I'm in it, oh, lights are back. Now that I'm in it, I'm seeing a lot more of the different types of imagery. Like, for example, in Malawi, I'm seeing that there's more young locals who are taking photos of their surroundings and posting them online, even just, you know, without curating or anything, just simply putting stuff online. And I feel like maybe everyone is seeing the need of changing this image, and especially of Malawi. Maybe I can get into that later. The specificity of Malawi and the NGO kind of tourism, the volunteer tourism, and how people are seeing the continent.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I was in Malawi for the first time ever. I'm half Malawian, but I've only been there once, and that was in 2018. And that was quite interesting to see the contrast of what I'd seen about Malawi and being in Lilongwe, being in Blantyre for a few days and stuff. That really reshaped my entire thinking around the continent, because that was my first time venturing higher up the continent and stuff. So I mean, that's interesting to see, like the type of images that we're getting out of that. And then with stock footage, that's an interesting space to be in, right? Creating stock imagery of the continent. Like we always see the same stereotypes, dancing, traditional clothes that are not necessarily traditional. What does it mean like for you molding that, Josiane, in terms of the business and growing that? How's that been shaping that kind of imagery from a business perspective, basically?
Yeah, for us, it's been really interesting because so when I started Pisha, it was with the idea of like Lulu, you know, making sure that we have the right perception and we have like a better representation. I was tired of seeing image of international development, you know, or safari. I thought that there was a lot more to that. And every time I was going to Gabon, I was like, okay, I'm not seeing what I see. So there's definitely something to be done here. But the frustration that we've had and we've seen is that we didn't realize how deeply even creators were actually perpetrating themselves these bad images. We still have, once in a while, a contributor who will send an image of a child, you know, in the street, in his underwear smiling, you know, those typical touristy type of stereotype that we don't like. And it really hurts me when I see that it's our own people submitting those images. And I'm like, no, we don't want that. So it's been a fun journey. Some people, for example, when we try to get some food images, we get a bunch of submissions on burgers and fries. And I'm like, no way, I can't believe that. I'm like, I can't believe we're having burgers and fries. Like I have to create burgers and fries. So there's a lot of chat and talk and education that we have to do with contributors so that themselves, they realize that their everyday life has value. What they see every day, you know, the food that they buy on the street, it has value because it's scarce. Like not every platform has it. Not a lot of people understand why it matters to us. Not a lot of people understand why we love plantain so much because they don't see it. So yeah, so it's a lot of work to do that we're continuing doing. So we see small changes and it's always nice to see small changes.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, the stereotypes of what food is available are always quite interesting. Like people are not necessarily well researched in the cuisine of the different parts of Africa and all that kind of stuff. We are so burger and fries adamant in our ideas of being African and stuff, and that's quite interesting. And it was, I mean, we're starting to see that shift, I guess, with the kind of images that you're getting and everything. But let me just jump quickly to Phillipe. I mean, you made an interesting book about I mean, I've seen the book, it's really quite big and stuff, and it's about Rwanda and stuff. And that really changed my perspective of what Rwanda, you know, the typical way we had seen it and all that kind of stuff. Take us through some of the process of developing such a book. What got into that book theory?
Yeah, so to get to that book, it's called This is Rwanda, an aerial sort of perspective and journey, one that hadn't been done before, actually. And to basically what Josiane was saying and Lulu they were saying as well is to say, well, this continent has been being portrayed differently than the one us on the ground. They're actually seeing it every day. And from that point, when we started the Loom, the creative studio in 2010, we looked around and two things jumped out. So Rwanda has experienced a genocide against the Tutsi. And that was, you know, something terrible. Many people died and everything. And the kind of images you would find were either the genocide related or the guerrillas, because the country had now started pushing tourism and gorillas as one of the sort of the attractions. And we said, but there's a lot more happening. There's the creative world happening. And from that sort of starting point, we said, we have to change the imagery in what we're seeing. And, you know, on a journey of 10 years, because we just celebrated, by the way, 10 years of the Lulama Creative Studio, is to say, okay, we're constantly documenting and showing a different side of Rwanda, of the continent, like Josiane was saying. And, it got to a point where we realized the opportunity was there in providing sort of a zoomed out version, which is aerial, right, photography through helicopter. And it's to say, okay, well, this is something quite unique. And this is usually the type of things where they fly in some from Nat Geo, who has never been probably to Rwanda or Malawi or you name it, or Gabon, right? They just kind of land and take a few photos and get out. We said, wait a second, Rwandans, people from Rwanda, so my colleague and I, Gael and myself, said, we can actually show you that perspective. It does not, you don't need someone from Nat Geo. And in that sort of same thought, you're also saying the talent is actually there on the continent to show that perspective. So that's where it came, where we said, okay, the opportunity is there. There was a local company that understood the thought right away and said, you know what, let's do it. Take as many flights as you need. And we did that. And we showed really in a book that's about 200 plus pages. And we said, let's show Rwanda from a different perspective. Yes, the genocide happened. We acknowledge that. Yes, there are the guerrillas, which is what brings in tourists, but there's also a different side. And that was really the sort of the drive behind that project. Yeah, this is Rwanda.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, we hope to see that that replicated in different countries across Africa and stuff, because I think we never really think about the aerial side of Africa and stuff. We always on the ground and everything, on the streets and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's super interesting. And then, I mean, in terms of Lulu, being a South African living in Malawi, what's that experience like? Because that must be a different culture, shock.
It was a culture shock, but also after a while, because I've been here now for almost a year. So the first few months were different. The first day I arrived, it was pouring with rain, like pouring. And then I thought, okay, it's just going to be one day. And then it was a couple of days. And I started getting depressed because I wanted to go out, but it was a lot of rain. But you know what? After a while, I started to realize how similar we are. In fact, as you would have seen on my bio, that the fact that there's the whole Ngoni connection, it's not even about the fact that we are similar. We are actually one people. And the more I traveled, and I've been fortunate to, I was in the south where the Chewas are, and then I came up to the north where there's the Ngonis and the Tumbugas, and that's where I noticed actually we are just one people. Language, the way we live. But I'm not gonna lie, South Africa, of course, there's a lot more aesthetics to our lives. Whether or not they translate to real lives inside your house, that's another conversation. But the way that life looks in South Africa is different. It's easier. There are things that you take for granted because you walk into a shop and get them. Whereas in Malawi, you see where they come from, like food, for example. Like farming is huge in Malawi, and subsistence farming, not just commercial farming. So I did have a bit of a culture shock, but also then I started to learn how to simplify my own life to fit into this, because I was not going to be the different one that's doing things differently and always wanting convenience, when maybe it wasn't always around. But also another factor which I really appreciated about Malawi is the safety. Coming from South Africa with the issues that we have around violence, not that Malawi doesn't have, but I was able to go out for a drink, meet new people, and have fun and just relax without worrying that something might happen to me. So there were things that were a shock, but most things were a beautiful shock. I mean, I keep saying to my friends that Malawi has been such a beautiful surprise. I'm still here, even though borders are open and I could actually go home if I wanted, but I'm still here because I've really found something that I really love in Malawi.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. hopefully I can come back next year to Malawi to see where I'm Tonga. So hopefully I can see where in Gata Bay and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, that's where your people are.
Yeah. And then, Josiane, you're Gabonese, right?
Yes.
American. And I mean, not to sound ignorant and stuff. All I really know about Gabon was through a friend of mine who's a photographer, Yanisku Ibinga. And that was some of the images that he's in Canada now. But some of the images that he had created and all that kind of stuff. That's all I really know. Do you travel there regularly, in between both countries and stuff? And then how do you then use that for the business side of Picture Stock and your own photography and stuff?
Yeah, so Gabon is known, I mean, they're trying to push themselves out there as a country that is doing a lot for the environment. So that's the official line. And a lot of the images that you're going to see are going to be about the parks, the natural parks. But, you know, I feel like every city in Africa has a lot of similarities. I'm sorry, there's so much sun right now. Trying to move. A lot of cities, a lot of countries in Africa have so many things in common. It's, you know, people buzzing in the street, selling stuff in the street, the traffic, bad traffic, the rain, especially because we're in Central Africa. So I don't think I've been to Ghana and Kenya and Togo. I always feel like a lot of similarities in every place where I go. So that's Gabon. It's beautiful. We have a very tiny population, only 1.8 million people, with a country that's half the size of France, so it's a decent size. Traveling within the country is a little bit different because of road infrastructure, unfortunately. Like if you, Lulu, if you were going to go there, like you really have to want to do it, because right now it could be a pain. Like I've done it once. We went to the south of Gabon, and gosh, it was really tough. But once we got there, it was so beautiful. And I was like, damn, there's a lot of work to be done here. But yeah, so it's a beautiful country, nice people, beautiful food, really tasty food. So yeah, if you want to go and travel there, yeah, I really encourage it also. Even if you stay in the capital city, you have fun.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's a guy, Tebe Ikalafeng, he's traveled every country in Africa.
I follow him. Yes.
And yeah, I hopefully I can make it to Gabon at least. You know, I must at least tick the boxes of Gabon, Rwanda, Kenya. You know, I'm not tried the moonshot of all the countries, but I think Gabon is definitely on my list based on what I've seen and the people that I've met.
I was supposed to go this year, but with everything going on, I think I'm just gonna skip and see how it's going next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody wants to join next year, I'm for it.
We are all there.
I might just join you.
Yeah. And Phillipe, I mean, with Rwanda, I know I promised to come this year, but I mean, Corona, my friend.
Exactly. COVID. Yeah.
COVID. I mean, you've been able to travel the country and all that kind of stuff. How do you see it shaping up, basically, right? How do you see the changes going? I mean, post-genocide, the last 10 years. How do you see that kind of language come? I mean, Rwanda is very well developed and stuff. What is the reality of being on the ground in Rwanda and stuff? Because we see the great news clips, but what is the reality of being there?
Yeah, so the news, they're really not that far off from the reality. But you have to acknowledge that we went through our history. So 94 was really bad. It was the lowest point, actually, maybe for Rwanda, but for humanity, because a lot of people didn't show up, right? We expected the world to be there and jump in and say, hey, you know what? You know, we've had the Holocaust. We can't have a genocide happen, right? But it didn't happen. But as a country, we said, okay, well, you know, if you wait for people to show up, it's not going to happen. So you start with yourself and you say, how can you build yourself? So for the first sort of 10, 15 years, you have everyone sort of pulling in and saying, we're going to change the country ourselves. So it takes a lot of work. It takes people really putting the energy in saying, this is it. And then it comes a point where maybe around, so I moved back here around 2011. And at the time, I mean, the internet was there, but we were laying down fiber around the whole country. So what ends up happening is a few years later, you have a whole country that's actually connected to the internet. So there was a lot of foresight from the leadership in saying, you know what, the internet being connected is the future. It is a way for us to sort of leapfrog and jump some of these things that are happening and say, you know, we want to be there and be part of the global conversation. So, you know, you end up with something happening is around 2014 is everyone is on Facebook, everyone is on Instagram, and these kind of things. And it really drives the creative industry. So at the beginning, you see, you know, everyone sort of doing portraits and weddings and whatnot, right? Because that's the thing that everyone is getting married one day or another. And at one point, it's like, okay, now comes the creative part. And that has to be the most gratifying sort of, so from being here around, you know, 2010, 2011, is to see that progression and to be part of that journey and in really setting the tone and setting sort of, maybe not the direction, but say, hey, you know what, you can actually push the boundaries. So I had the chance to be educated and sort of life experience in Canada. So is to say, you know, with that, let's push the boundaries. Let's not limit ourselves to just wedding. Let's not limit ourselves to just portraits. Let's see what's happening in the fashion world. So all of that, you kind of take sort of everyone along the journey, and you really get to change the perspective of a country. And that was really important in saying, whatever we're documenting, actually, if you fly in, you will experience it. It's not, you know, the helicopter, it is a privileged perspective. It's not for everyone. But I have had a chance to, you know, travel the whole country by road, actually. So to see from the road and to see from the helicopter, I am providing this book and saying, hey, you know, this book is pretty unique in a sense, but I've seen this country from the road, from people, and it really is what I'm documenting. And now we're seeing a whole slew of youth, and what I really appreciated and what we've seen with Rwanda is the men and women, the young, you know, guys and the young girls really pushing the boundary of photography and imagery and what is being told about this continent, and then eventually this continent. Because some of these guys are getting a chance to travel around the continent and they're showing a different perspective.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up to Philip?
Yep.
Philip, so how do you do that? Because in Gabon, we have that issue, I mean, it's not an issue, but where, yeah, a lot of the young photographer, they're actually, a lot of them seem to be very content with doing just weddings and you know, parties and events, and it's really hard to make them understand that, you know, there's also value into just, you know, doing your own thing, creative, pushing the boundaries. How do you guys? I mean, you mentioned that because of the experience of the genocide, there was probably that mindset already about not waiting for anybody to tell you something. But how do you every day make this happen? Like, do you guys have a lot of workshops around photography?
Yeah, so in that sense, for example, my colleague that we did the book with, Gael, actually, he's been in Gabon, and with his dad have actually done a lot of books in some of the parks there. But the, you know, we know this in the creative world is it has to be actionable. So you have to show something for people to follow. So what we did is, with Gael, for example, my colleague, is one of the things was that, traveling, tourism, conservation has always been sort of a foreigner thing. And he said, no, it has to be local, right? So you take the guides, a local guide, and say, you know what, I'm giving you a camera, for example, or I'm gonna lend you my camera. So it doesn't have, so I can see how, giving you a camera can be expensive and whatever. It's, I'm gonna lend you my camera for a month, and I want you to document your perspective, right? So that's one aspect of it. And then having had the privilege of, growing up in Canada and having access to like a studio, is to say, okay, I'm gonna do photo shoots of like, what are the best models? What are the makeup artists? What are the best hair people? Let's get together and let's do something. And you'd be surprised at what point, maybe not copying, but copying is good. So in a way, when you're pushing the boundary, is to say, I'm gonna do it first, and then hopefully people will come up with their own ideas and stuff. So it's really comes down to very simple things and saying, you know what, I'm lending you my camera for a couple of days, for a weekend, show me your perspective, and then pushing that story. And I have to say, the one thing, the fact that Rwanda is where we are right now in terms of the imagery and whatnot is 10 years later, so it takes time. So there's a patience that one has to acknowledge, but with the beauty of internet and access, it will happen faster, whether it's in Gabon, Malawi, Rwanda, or anywhere else. So it will happen faster than people actually think.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's amazing. Lulu, this 2020, it really came as an interesting, year. For some of us, this was supposed to be our year. This was supposed to be the year where all these ideas we had were supposed to manifest no matter what. And then it changed in January, February, depending on where you march, wherever you are. How has been 2020 for you as a travel writer, as a creative, young creative in a foreign country and stuff?
It's been quite interesting actually, because basically I've been making it up as I go. Like literally, that's what I've been doing. Because yes, I planned to be in Malawi for a while, but I also had a plan to do Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, then Rwanda. And I had a whole plan. I spoke to editors about stories, and we all agreed. And then I have fun for 2 months, and the third month, COVID happens. And now no editor is looking for a travel story, because no one is reading travel stories. So now I need to push a lot of my content on social media, which was not really my biggest thing. My biggest thing was I speak to editors and I give them stories and I get paid for stories. But then I had to put more emphasis on social media, on digital content. And then I had to try and find other ways, like transcribing. I transcribe and I do other online jobs, right? But besides that, just being in Malawi, being a foreigner, being alone, my family being far from me and having expected me to be back, and all of a sudden I can't come back because everything is closed. It has forced me to slow down, because at least I knew people, and I started getting to know more people, and it helped for me to be able to create my own little community wherever I was. There were people that I could see when we were allowed to see each other, but besides that, I had people checking on me. I had to hike a lot more, because I needed to be outside. And hiking has never really been such a big thing for me, but suddenly I had to do a lot of hiking, which also assisted me in terms of getting to know the country better. So yeah, I suppose nobody expected it, of course, but it really hit me. There were points where I got depressed. I thought about the fact that, oh my God, I'm actually so far from home. But then on other days, it was like, you know what? I'm far from home, but I'm surrounded by good people. I'm in a good country. I'm still able to make money. And that didn't of course, that kind of helped me to be able to focus on other things, on good things. So I've learned a lot. I was planning to not be here by now, but I'm here. And in fact, even if I do go home next month, I have a plan to come back to Malawi because Malawi has really won me. So 2020, it really, yeah, I was really found unexpected, if I can put it that way. It really, really hit me in a way that I didn't expect. But I was able to at least think on my feet and find other ways to enjoy the country, to explore the country, to learn more about the country. And here I am.
That's amazing. Yeah, 2020 was a decade ender. Yeah, a way to end a decade.
Yeah, that is the way.
Yeah. And in terms of Josiane, with you, I'm interested to see what is the most searched thing in 2020 on Picture Stock. What kind of images were people looking for in 2020? Because I'm suspecting they were looking for people like us, but then busy.
What do you mean by us?
I mean, people of color and stuff.
Oh, well, so so they will do that on other platforms. They don't have to use diversity terms on that platform. So we found out that this year we still had a lot of search for business people and families. So I guess some people, managed to, still have their business open. And then when it comes to family, I suspect that people just wanted to reinforce the connection aspect of it while searching for images. So yeah, but we don't have data about on diversity because you don't have to type, I'm looking for a Black man. I mean, that's all you get. Pretty much.
Yeah. And in terms of new images now being submitted during Corona, did you get a lot of submissions around social distancing? Did you get a lot of images around people wearing masks and all that kind of stuff? What was that contribution like from the community of photographers?
Yeah, so right before the general lockdown, we launched a COVID collection. And that was a free collection because we wanted, anybody who wanted to, communicate around COVID issues to have access to images. So we launched that collection. Yes, it was obviously a lot of photos of people washing hands and people wearing masks. And we asked them, after that, we asked people not to oversubmit people with masks because honestly, it's really depressing just seeing images of people with all type of masks, especially when they were at home. So because people were stuck at home, they will try to submit images of people wearing masks at home, which doesn't make sense because when you're at home, that's where you're actually not wearing your mask.
Yeah.
But they were not going out. They were trying to stay safe. And then in some places like Kenya, forget it. Like they would not even try to venture outside to take photos. So we didn't get a lot of social distancing. We had a challenge rather on the new, how was it called? The new normal. So where we had people working out at home, people working from home. So instead of focusing on COVID, we rather try to focus on the new normal, how COVID had changed our lives. So we're getting more of that.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I mean, it definitely is the new normal now. You have to be at home, work from home. Make sure you got good connectivity and all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting time to be a creator.
Yeah, and it's funny because we also realized how the creative community in Africa also has a day job, and they rely on their day job for connectivity.
Yeah.
So when COVID happened, when the shutdown happened, we were actually hoping to launch the video collection, and nobody could send us videos. They were like, we can't with the home network. So we were like, okay, good. Let's figure it out later.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, connectivity is such a big issue in Africa. We need to fix it.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah. With you, Phillipe, you guys are celebrating 10 years of the studio. 10 years, right in the middle of a pandemic and stuff. How has business been then in this 10th year, basically as a creative studio? Yeah.
Yeah. So if give you a bit of the journey. So the first sort of chapter, if I can call it that way, the first sort of 4 or 5 years was a lot of education, because you have to realize, we're talking 2010, 2011. People don't understand what's a communication agency. What do you guys do? And, you could just put some images and that's it. So from that, when you have that as a starting point, you spend actually sort of the first few years when you're starting as an educational, as much as you're trying to get work, is really educational to make people understand that, when you have an event, you really need a good photographer to capture the emotion and the moment, because that moment mattered to you, either as an organization or as an agency, whatever. It's a moment for you, so it needs to be captured properly, and the emotion needs to be there. So at the beginning, there's a lot of education that happens, and slowly people start understanding, and so that's sort of the first 4 or 5 years, and then the next 3 or 4 years, we're looking at what, 8 or 9 years now. People really understand. You're now trying to sort of manage expectations and really show perspective, and also say, this is my voice. There's certain things I won't do. Poverty porn, for I mean, this continent is moving at such a fast pace. Yes, you can show the different perspective, but we don't want to sort of go that route. And then, 2020 comes along, and boom. Rwanda, for example, has a whole strategy actually on what we call the MICE strategy, which is meetings, incentives, conference, and events. So we actually position ourselves that means infrastructure, that means all kinds of things. You build conference centers, you build all kinds of things to say, we're making Rwanda your place for when your company, for example, wants to have, a get together with the whole global team. This is the place to be. When the, UNDP or whatever, this is their, yearly review something, Rwanda is a place to be. When, right now, for example, what's in is the basketball. So when you're saying basketball, Africa basketball, when you want to do an event, Rwanda is a place to be. So we position ourselves. We've been working really hard at it, right? So that creates a whole ecosystem, right? So then 2020 hits, and boom, everyone is affected. From, the airplanes are actually sitting on the tarmac, right? So you think of yourself as someone who's attending a conference. You fly in, someone drives you to a hotel, someone gives you a menu and you eat, and then you attend the conference, and people take photos and videos and whatnot, and then you go out, you explore either the bars and restaurants, the clubs, and then you also explore sort of the cultural aspect, all of that, and then you get back to a plane and you're out. So that whole thing is completely affected by what COVID does, and everyone comes at a standstill. So for us, it was the first sort of month and the first couple of weeks, you see your whole calendar saying postpone, 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 cancel, postpone, cancel, cancel. So you freak out. So there is a moment where you freeze and it's hard and whatnot, but then you do have to pick yourself up and relying on friends, family, people in the industry, and to say, okay, how can we pivot? How can we help you? And you realize that actually a lot of companies didn't have a lot of presence online. So this is a chance for them to be online. So we've seen a spike in demand of stock photography, and it's fascinating because we're going through that journey of, how do I find sort of a black lady talking to her friends, and they're on a Zoom call. And so it made me think of picture. It's challenging. All of a sudden, that content is not there, and then so I guess that's where picture comes in. Is now they have that kind of content available. So it was tough at the beginning, like anyone else, to be honest. But we've seen quite many sort of our clients and potential clients move all online, and we're trying to cater to that essentially.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, we're now having to shift technology. We need the images that represent us doing conferences online. We need that kind of content. I mean, the last question, then the most important question: where do we collectively see the continent pushing 10 years from now on? Visually, 2030, we want to be physically somewhere in a conference, just having the discussion about what discussions that we had today. Where do you all see the continent moving towards? Like, what does it look like 10 years from now on? What's the ideal scenario? Anyone can go first.
Okay,
Lulu,
I could go first.
yeah.
So I don't know if I can. I have my hopes, of course, for the whole continent, but I've also noticed that we are at different parts, and I think that's what I learned in Malawi. We are at different times and at different parts of our journey. And I've found that creativity in Malawi is still something that is, that is still growing. There's a lot more, with the high levels of poverty. So there's a lot more of survival, even someone that has a camera, they want to have a photo studio and take photos so that at the end of the day, they have this much money, so that they can carry on tomorrow. So for a country like Malawi, I see, the young people they're resilient, they want to survive and they want to learn new skills and, they're doing a lot. But I'd like to see a broader acceptance of creativity in our communities, in communities in Malawi, not so much, I think like Josiane said, not so much photographing weddings and parties and doing this so that I can get money now, but I'm hoping for like a broader acceptance of creativity. And when it comes to travel, what I'm hoping to see is Africans visiting each other. Tourism, I think Phillipe said earlier, tourism has just been so much of a foreign thing, of a colonial thing, if you want. But what I would love to see is Africans advertising tourism to each other. Southern Africa, South African, Botswana, and a lot more of that, not just a small number of people. Making tourism affordable, accessible to other Africans, so that we can, we are one people in any case, so we can see each other, visit each other in the old African way, go and see what's happening in Zambia, go and see what's happening, in Lesotho, in Botswana. And it must just be simple like that, So that's what I'm hoping for on the creative side, and of course, for tourism.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Who wants to, Josiane?
I agree with that completely. I feel like, to me, we can only push the visual creativity if we get patrons. So if we get to be customers of these creations, if we just like them, nobody, as you say, people are trying to survive. So if we just like them on social media, nobody's going nowhere. We need to get into the cycle of, cherishing a piece of art that's been created by someone, like he's put the hours on it. It's done manually. We need to cherish that and say, you know what, maybe once a year for Christmas, I'm going to get myself like a nice piece of art. So if we get into that mindset also as buyers, we help the creative world and then the creative community. And that's what we want creative to even do more, because they know that people are getting married every year, every day. So that's where the money is. But if people were starting to buy from their art, one that went there's this famous painter, and And when I was growing up, like I always loved his work, but I always thought that it would be so expensive. And then when I started working, I said, you know what? I'm just going to make myself like a nice gift. I'm just going to go find him and try to buy his piece. And I was so shocked because I was like, okay, this is so cheap actually compared to what people sell us here in the States. I'm like, there was no comparison, like the level of creativity and the price, it was just like, there was a mismatch, and I was really shocked. And although I was really happy to have that piece, then I was like, yeah, but somebody needs to really help you because you could really be here. So we need to do that, buy, consume our own, from our own artists and help them.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, we will definitely do that. And Phillipe?
Yeah, it really jump on what Lulu has said, and Josiane as well. So one, we've seen, at least in Rwanda, is a really big push for local tourism. So your average Rwandan to really say, hey, you know what? This is not only for tourists, I can actually go check it out. And then in that sense, it's pushed also some of the local, maybe not local or actually local and international hotels to bring down their prices and say, okay, you know, everyone should be able to visit or have access to these places. So on that end, for sure, take advantage of it. If your country is pushing for it, or you can demand it, go for it. Go for it. Really take a chance and visit all these places. I look back for me, you know, I thought I knew Rwanda until I got a chance to travel the whole continent by road first, and I discovered a whole new country. And then on top of that, you know, came later on the helicopter. But so that was one. And then on the other side, like Josiane was saying, really invest and put your money where your mouth is. If you say, hey, I'm a fan of this person, I'm a fan of their work, you know, it could be a small piece. It doesn't have to be some big, you know, painting or, you know, a you know, really thick book. You can say, you know what, I'm gonna start with something small. I'm gonna buy, you know, a Zine or something and say, I am putting where my money is, my mouth is, and I'm gonna invest in you and participate in that economy, especially like Josiane was saying. It really has sort of a domino effect on who it affects, because that person is able to pay, you know, the printer is able to pay the person who supplies the paper, etc., etc. So everyone benefits along when you talk about sort of the value chain. So it's really important to, you know, really contribute to your friends' creations at the same time. Discover your country.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Yeah, we definitely have to put our mind where our mouths are. Basically, we talk about support, but I think we should do that financially, no matter what. Well, starting small if possible and stuff. But that comes to the end at exactly 7:50, my time. Thank you very much for doing this. I know Lulu was nervous, but you see how.
Really, you're gonna do that to me?
But thank you very much. I mean, this has been super insightful and super good to learn. I think these dialogues and conversations are super important. And they're going to be available. They're going to be available forever on Facebook and everything. So you can share and watch and all that kind of stuff. If you want to copy, just let me know. But thank you very much for doing this, and thank you for sharing your stories and your journeys and everything. But yeah, that comes to the end of this segment.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Meet you all.
Yeah, thank you. Take care. Bye.
Cheers.
Yes.